Welcome to the latest edition of the Snews here at LonghornStation.com. Ahmad Brooks, John Medani with you, and after 9 seasons in San Diego, the Chargers have said goodbye to LaDainian Tomlinson. Today on this Top 5 Tuesday, on the air, we each provided you with our list of the top 5 destinations for LaDainian Tomlinson based on his criteria. Number 1, he wants to win a championship. Number 2, he wants to play with a great quarterback. He kind of left it at that. I kind of threw weather in, but that's just really me. And at any rate, here's the list that we had. Number 5?
Number 5 for me, I'm going to stay within the state of California and move right, not too far from there, and go to San Francisco. I think San Francisco 49ers would be an ideal destination for LaDainian Tomlinson. Here's why. Frank Gore needs a backup. They went to Glenn Coffey, the young man out of Alabama. Didn't really provide them with a lot of depth there at that position when Gore was injured last year. And they're still trying to find a way to get a quarterback. An improved running game always helps a young quarterback in Alex Smith or Sean Hill, whoever they may throw out there. And by the way, they have one of the more football cred coaches in the business in Mike Singletary. I think LT, if he's going to humble himself, I think he humbles himself for Mike Singletary. Number 5 for me, the 49ers.
It's pretty good. The weather makes sense. The grass makes sense. The division makes sense. Number 5 for me makes no sense. But it's a reach, and I'm going there. I'm going to say the Atlanta Falcons. And what's interesting to me about this, I think Atlanta, you're going to see in the offseason them try to get back to recapture the magic from 2 seasons ago when they came out of nowhere, except for me. Came out of nowhere and surprised everybody, went to the playoffs, and Michael the Burner Turner, Matt Ryan was the real thing as a rookie quarterback, etc. Jarius Norwood, nice little change of pace back. I think they got away from what they really did 2 seasons ago. That plus the more difficult schedule because they're now a playoff team and not one of the worst teams in the NFL. But I think adding a piece like LaDainian Tomlinson, he adds maturity, he adds focus, and I expect them to get back to running the ball a lot. It's going to be a lot of play-action passes from Matt Ryan over the top, but I think adding LaDainian Tomlinson to that locker room as a professional is something that young football team needs. And it's not like he hasn't played with Michael Turner before. They were together in San Diego, so they don't have to worry about clashing egos there. LT at this point knows that Turner's the guy. Now he's there to do for Turner what Turner did for him in San Diego.
That's fair. Number 4 for me, I'll go to the state of Texas, Houston Texans, where Steve Slayton suffered a neck injury that kept him out a few games, and they had to resort to a guy named Chris Brown. They're not very deep at this position, and we know they like to throw the football. What better way to get a guy involved in this offense than having LaDainian Tomlinson, a guy who caught 100 passes out of the backfield one season? I don't think they're going to expect him to do that, but he's capable. I do believe that, and with the way that Shaw played last year, with having one of the most talented wide receivers in Andre Johnson, it just makes sense to me to bring in another great playmaker. It seems like it worked out for the New Orleans Saints in having Reggie Bush. I think he's a guy that can handle just a little bit more, but he's in that same mode. He's an X factor and a nightmare for you to have to try to defend.
Well, I'm going to stay within the state lines. I'd love to see him come home to Texas. I'm going to put him in Dallas. I'm going to put him with the Cowboys. I just am. I'm done with Marion Barber. I'm a Cowboys fan. People who listen to the show know that. Marion Barber, when he does convert a 3rd and 1, he immediately limps off the field, and all of a sudden he's questionable or he's day-to-day. He's just done. I don't dislike Marion Barber, and in fact, I think he gave the Cowboys a lot of value based on what they spent on him, draft pick-wise, money-wise. But now, with his tenure, he's starting to get expensive, and he's due about $4 million. Give LT half of that. I think LaDainian Tomlinson would show up here for $2 million, and actually, when you show Tashard Choice and Felix Jones, LT might think he actually has a chance to win the starting job. Equal rotation. Tony Romo is going to be the guy with this offense, whether we like it or not.
Fair.
So I think if you're asking me, can we trade Marion Barber for LaDainian Tomlinson, which is basically what this is, I take it. Dallas number 4 on my list.
I can't argue with that, John, being a Cowboys fan. And I think when you start talking about the Cowboys, before this year, one of the last times they made it, Bill Parcells was roaming the sideline. He has innovative footballs, ladies and gentlemen, and this is the reason why Miami is the number 3 team on my list as to where LT could potentially land. Bill Parcells doesn't care. He wants to win ball games. I mean, one of the greatest turnarounds, and I think one of the reasons why they weren't really in the mix, well, they were in the mix for the playoffs, but the reason why they didn't solidify the deal is Ronnie Brown got hurt. He also alluded, after being injured, that he might not be in Miami next year based on the way things work out with free agency. This could be a problem because you don't want to rely on Ricky Williams, who I think is capable. He showed that when Ronnie went down. But you need an extra back. This is a 2-back, potentially 3-back NFL now. LaDainian Tomlinson, the weather's great. What place is better than San Diego and South Beach? I can't think of one, John. Number 3 for me, Miami Dolphins.
That's a good one. It really is. Number 3 for me is the Philadelphia Eagles. Not so much weather. I realize the weather doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But in terms of the hunger factor, the Philadelphia Eagles, and they've done this now, they've kind of collected personalities with the Michael Vick signing. They've got Donovan McNabb. McCoy is a really good running back. Brian Westbrook is a terrific running back who's just kind of long in the tooth. Let's add that other third piece. I realize it hasn't worked a lot in the past. Remember the Lakers when they brought in Karl Malone and Gary Payton, kind of like an all-star cast, and didn't really work. But the Eagles aren't that far off. And they're pretty explosive now down the field over the top. You can't devote too much of your attention to stopping the run because McNabb still has a big arm and they will still beat you deep. I think that's just a very intriguing mix, and it's the kind of mix that makes sense to me for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going to put LT and Philly at number 3 on my list.
Number 1 and number 2 for us, we mirror here, and I think it's for a lot of reasons. He talked about winning a championship. Hop on board with Peyton Manning. I mean, anybody looking for a championship, I think they now have the franchise with their consistency. They're much like the New England Patriots were a few years ago. If you want to win a championship, go hop on with Peyton Manning. Joseph Adai is not the guy out of the backfield. Donald Brown had 11 receptions a year ago out of the backfield, 169 yards. 72 of those came on one run. They need a threat out of the backfield. You think of those plays in the Super Bowl that Joseph Adai could have potentially broke. LT might have had a 50-yarder. He might have made a guy miss, stiff-arm somebody, house call. That could have been the difference in a ball game where the game came down to the last series. I think LaDainian Tomlinson is a great fit there, and who wouldn't want to play with Peyton Manning?
Yeah, I think you and I are together on this on number 2 and number 1. I do have the Colts at number 2 on my list too, and I just think it makes sense. Peyton Manning, arguably the best quarterback in football, certainly the most sound quarterback you expect to compete every year that you got him.
Absolutely.
They were very close. They just didn't get it done. They were in the Super Bowl. They didn't make enough plays to win, but they're going to be close, and that's an automatic fit. Joseph Adai, a little long in the tooth now, and remember, just a few years ago when the Colts did win the Super Bowl, they had 2 running backs that were capable of catching the ball out of the backfield and running up the middle, and that was Dominic Rhodes. It was a big piece of that Super Bowl, and Joseph Adai. Well, Donald Brown's going to be a nice back, but he doesn't catch passes out of the backfield. LaDainian Tomlinson could step right in. And in terms of road trips, AFC South, you're talking about road trips within the division, going to Tennessee, going to Houston, going to Jacksonville, warm weather destinations for the most part. It makes perfect sense. And number 1 on our list, I think we both agree here too, with this asterisk, Brett Favre has to come back.
Yes.
If Brett Favre comes back, I think we both agree Minnesota's the best stop.
And pending Chester Taylor leaves, but it just makes sense. Chester Taylor caught 44 catches a year ago out of the backfield and had, of course, he was averaging 8.8 a pop. LaDainian Tomlinson could do that right now, and I don't think there are many backs that LaDainian Tomlinson would back up in the league. Adrian Peterson, I think, is one of them.
Yeah, and because LT is used to being an every down back and a starter, I think he could spell Adrian Peterson. Yep. You know, they've gotten to the point now where Adrian takes his knocks. Maybe he sits for a game, maybe the week adjacent to a bye week, so he gets 2 weeks off. You want to get him rested for the postseason. Remember now, the Vikings gained 485 yards of offense against the Saints. They just didn't beat them.
Beat them down.
They just didn't beat them, but that's almost 500 yards against the team that won the Super Bowl. The Vikings know they're close. They announced that they've signed LaDainian Tomlinson. Brett Favre is 48 hours away from saying, yeah, I'm coming back too. It just seems to make sense to us. All right, be careful out there with the weather. I know it's bad. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. Rod Babers joins us in studio tomorrow and Thursday as I make my way to Stillwater. Lots of Longhorn basketball to talk. I'm going to try to.
Safe travels, John.
Matter of fact, I'm going to fly the plane, make sure we get there safe. We'll see you tomorrow, AM 1300 The Zone.